Y'all, I am so thrilled to welcome our guest today, Dr. Erica Jordan Thomas. She is seriously one of my personal favorites and a hero, especially in this space. So, not only has she dominated the education world as a former principal who skyrocketed her school to top rankings, guys, but she's also a seven-figure entrepreneur. She has an education consulting business and she manages a thriving real estate portfolio through her company, Emma and Easter Realty Group. Talk about not being a one trick pony. I have been following her journey ever since I met her in a women's mastermind for seven figure entrepreneurs. And it was just interesting to see the way that she's able to transfer her skills across different wealth building avenues. And that is exactly why I wanted her here today. And I'm so excited for you to hear from her and about her story. The other day, I was just telling her in the green room, I saw a little piece of merch just drop. I'm always following to see, okay, what does she have going on right now? Because I'm such a huge fan. Dr. EJT, thank you so much for making the time to be with us today. I am so excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I consider this an honor and a privilege, to just spend time with you, and
Yes.
even more of a joy to spend time with your audience. I'm excited.
Oh, so good. Now, your journey started as a math teacher. Shout out to
It
all of our
did.
math teachers. A lot of us, we went
Yes.
into medicine because we had an amazing math teacher that supported us. And now you are running not one, but multiple thriving companies. So, what sparked you to have a vision and recognize that you are not a one trick pony? You do not have to stay in your lane like many of us are told, even in medicine. You decided to dive headfirst into entrepreneurship, into real estate investing. What was that thing that sparked that in you?
Yeah. So, I think, the thing that comes to mind, I frequently say is, disruption always precedes transformation.
Mm.
Right. And so for me, oftentimes, like the greatest pivots that have the deepest rewards were actually like the origin of them was some type of disruption that in the moment did not
Mm.
feel good.
Mm.
Right.
Say that
And
again.
so
Yes.
for my entrepreneurship journey, I started my business, my consulting business, when I was a principal.
Hmm.
And it during that time, uh, the school district, I won't go into much like education policy because I'm an education nerd, but
Hmm.
school districts revisit their boundary lines, every few years. And if you can imagine, that brings a lot of conversations around economics, around class, around race, around where do kids go to school. And a part of that conversation was essentially a proposal to add 300 to 400 kids to my school building. And that
That's a
experience was a
lot.
disruption. It absolutely was. And, the leadership side of my brain is also like, there's something that we've built where you're getting ready to disrupt our school. And to be clear, like all kids need great schools, but
Mm.
you're not doing this in the way that's best for kids and community by just
Mm.
moving groups of kids around, when there's a way that you go about doing this the right way, where you stagger, the growth, you stagger, kind of the change. So I say that to say is, I thought I was going to be a career principal. I loved the
Mm.
job. I didn't see myself doing anything beyond that, until that disruption happened. And so I didn't know what I was going to do next, because I hadn't, for the first time in my life, hadn't planned out the next thing. And so I, got into consulting on the side. I was like, well, let me start consulting now until I figure out what my next thing is. And fast forward now, almost 8 years later, I have a multi-million-dollar business. And so for me, it was, the disruption of something that is helping me in a moment of comfort. There's a
Mm.
moment of disruption that is actually telling you that it's time to move. And if I think about the real estate side, that
Mm.
most certainly has been the same thing as well, of like some type of disruption that has happened that is telling me it's time to move and it's time to grow.
Mm. So good. And a lot of medical professionals right now are facing a massive amount of disruption. They're battling burnout. The
Mm-hmm.
insurance payments are not what they're supposed to be. And they're out here working on these W-2 streets, fighting for their lives in some instances. And so that's very meaningful that he shared about, how disruption precedes your ability to transform and create this business that serves you.
Right.
So, yeah. So when you started thinking about investing while you were still an educator, what would you say was that smallest first step that you took that made the difference, that kind of opened the doors for you to see what's out there? Something maybe a busy doctor right now sitting in the audience listening could think to themselves, maybe I can actually do that.
Mm. So it's interesting. So I currently now have 5 properties. My first
Wow.
property I purchased in 2013.
Mm.
I did not purchase my next property until 2021. It's
Oh,
almost
wow.
10 years later.
Yeah.
So the thought process with my very first property, I think I was, oh goodness, 2013, I would have been, I think like 25,
Mhm.
maybe 24, 25. And I just was like, I drank the Kool-Aid of like, you're supposed to have a house, like you're supposed to be a homeowner. And here I was,
Mhm.
this single woman, like mid 20s. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm supposed to have a house.
Yeah.
And so I found a house at that time. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was new construction.
Nice.
And it was a 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath. And you will not believe this, but it was $150,000.
Those
New
numbers,
construction.
those were the good old days, huh?
New construction. Okay. And I think the
Wow.
interest rate was like
Oh,
three something, right? And so
don't
my
turn the
mortgage,
don't turn the channel, y'all. Don't turn the channel. Let us
listen,
rumble a
stay
little bit.
stay with us. Stay
Stay
with me,
with us, stay
okay? Because I promise you, this you're gonna get hope. I don't want you to think, oh my God, those were the good old days 10 years ago. But stick with me, okay?
Yes.
So that was 2013, bought the home. And I remember people telling me, you're a single woman. Like, why do you need all that house? Right.
Mm.
And a girl, I know my neighbor, I got on my neighbor's nerves because I was struggling with the grass cutting. My grass was
Mhm.
looking crazy because I'm a 24-year-old woman and I'm like, who can help me cut my grass? But anyway, so fast forward and I bought the home, stayed in it. In 2018, I left the principalship to go back to school full time to get my doctorate. So when I left Charlotte, I rented it out. So my mortgage was at that time it was like $1,000, and I got a long term renter for like at that time it was like $1,600 was market rent,
Nice.
and they signed like a 24-month lease. So I
Lovely.
was like, okay, great. So I then look up, fast forward, it's now 2021.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I really want to do this real estate thing. People keep talking about it. And
Yeah.
like, I had a home, but I didn't feel like a real estate investor. And as I'm like trying to figure out, like, okay, well, if I want to buy the next property, because I was committed, I was in school, I was going to graduate, I knew I was going to move to DC. And I said, I always want to own. Like, I just want to be able to pay down the mortgage. I don't want to rent, I want to own it. And so someone had mentioned, I'm trying to think, I'm like, it's DC super expensive. Like, I got to figure out
Mhm.
down payment. And they were like, well, you have a current property in Charlotte. Like, have you thought about a HELOC? And I was like, a HELOC?
Yeah.
I was like, well, they were like, yeah, how much is that home worth? And I was like, I don't know. So I went to go look at it. And lo and behold, the property is now worth $350,000. And so I'm like, oh, mind you, I bought it for 150.
Yeah.
Now it's worth 350, so it's
Yeah.
more than double in value. So that was the moment where I was like, oh, this is the power of real estate.
Yes.
This is what they're talking about.
Yes.
Because, and mind you, at this point, I left Charlotte in 2018. Now we're fast forwarding, it's like 2020, 2021. So I hadn't paid the mortgage in 2 years because someone else was paying it. A renter
Mhm.
was paying it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, I was like, it finally clicked for me. And I was like, okay, I need to keep doing this. So
Yes.
that was kind of like the first like leading domino in this real estate
Mhm.
journey,
Yes.
that made me realize the power of it. Because it's like literally, I bought it, had no clue. Like I wasn't back there analyzing numbers. I wasn't trying to like
Mhm.
run a deal. I was just like, I'm supposed to have a house, and bought a
Mhm.
house, and then looked up, doubled in price. And I have a long-term renter. So I'm like, oh, this is what they're talking about. So that was for me, like kind of what like made me fall in love with real estate
Yeah.
and gave me like the itch that I was like, okay, I got to keep scratching this and keep going.
Oh, I love it. Yes. And for those who are sitting in the back, I want you to step up to the front because what Dr. EJT is talking about is the appreciation. So she purchased in a great market. Charlotte is popping when it comes to
Hopping,
migration. Yes. So
hopping.
phenomenal market to have purchased in. So you got a lot of folks migrating to the area. The jobs, there's so many opportunities there, and so appreciation is so powerful when it comes to real estate investing and home ownership. So I love home ownership because appreciation, because of a leverage.
Mhm.
Leverage meaning I personally, Dave Ramsey, eat your heart out, but I personally am not buying a house for cash. I'm going to put a small down payment down, and now I have a control over this multi six figure asset with just a
Mhm.
smaller down payment. You get debt pay down, you have a renter in there, you have a tenant, you have a guest, depending on what your strategy is. They're paying down your debt, your HOA. If there's an HOA every single month, you get that debt payment and you get the cash flow. Like Dr. EJT said, she owed $1,000 a month. The renter was paying her 1,600 a month. That difference, the upside is her cash flow. So like I can go on and on. And don't forget tax benefits, bonus depreciation. Yes, just like I can't. So trying to make money and build a legacy and build your wealth up to seven figures without thinking about a real estate strategy is like trying to climb Mount Everest completely naked. Like real estate,
100%.
guys, real estate. And I know those of you who are like, I'm gonna buy businesses, I get that too. Business acquisition is very intriguing, it's very interesting. There is a lift there, it's different. But I'm a real estate girl. I don't know what to tell you. If you guys are watching right now, you can see like my grin is like up to my ears. So whenever someone says that, yes, they have gotten bitten by the real estate bug. I'm like, tell me more, tell me more. Yes.
Yes, yes. Well, and you said something that I think is so powerful that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah.
So, I didn't grow up coming from money.
Mm-mm.
And so there was just a lot of, self-learning, like unlearning that I had to do. And one of the things, that I talk about frequently is like there's a hidden curriculum to business, there's a
Mm.
hidden curriculum to wealth. And when I say hidden
Mm.
curriculum, meaning there are rules that
Yes.
people with money who are building wealth that they follow, but they're not written down anywhere. They're not spoken.
Mm.
And when you come from money, your mom, your dad, your uncle, your grandfather, whomever, your dad's, classmate from undergrad who's an attorney at the big law firm might sit you down and tell you. So they
Mm.
pass down the curriculum. Well, if you didn't come from that, well, how do you find it and how do you figure it out? Well, it's proximity and it's community. And what you just talked about
Mm.
of the tax strategy,
Yes.
as someone who A, didn't come from money, and
Mhm.
now I'm running a multi seven figure business,
Mhm.
which means that the profits from my business flow through on my personal taxes.
Mhm.
So if we have the scenario, let's say I have $1 million business that
Mm.
has a 20% profit margin, that means that $200,000 is now flowing through on my personal taxes as
Yep.
taxable income. And what is the way to mitigate that tax responsibility ethically? What a lot of people in the marketplace are talking about is, oh, will you just spend down? And it's like, well, no, like that is one way,
Yeah.
but that's the that is the floor. Like that's the one-on-one way that people
Yeah.
who really aren't sophisticated with tax strategy will tell you. They'll
Yeah.
tell you to spend down, and what spend down will do is the unintended consequence is on paper it doesn't show you as having income,
Yeah.
which in some ways that's actually really dangerous, right? So
Mhm.
what the hidden curriculum to wealth building is how do you manage your tax liability while also being able to show when you need to on paper that you have income. But
Yeah.
in those situations, it's not increasing your tax liability, it's real estate.
That's right.
Real estate is the great checks and balances
Yeah.
of where it can reduce your tax liability without reducing your income on paper. So you can go to a bank and show that you have income, but you didn't have to
Mhm.
pay taxes on that income because your real estate offset it. So the bank sees that you made money, but you didn't have to pay taxes on the money because of your real estate. So what you just said, I think is so powerful. And we don't
Mhm.
have enough conversations about that. And that's why, like, the real estate conversations make me so excited
Yeah.
because as I'm getting deeper and deeper into it, I'm
Yeah.
like, it's not that hard. Like,
No,
it's not that hard.
it
It's just
really
if you
isn't.
don't know, it feels
Mhm.
like it's hard because it's really just about access to information.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was not expecting the conversation to go in this direction. Last week, I went viral in a Facebook group, and it was women pharmacists who were asking about taxes and how to shelter some of their taxable income because the anonymous poster mentioned my husband and I both are making multi six figures per year. We have tried everything. We've increased our exemptions. We have maxed out our HSA, maxed out our 401k, maxed out, and we still owe. And literally six people commented in there and said, Dr. Rachel can help with that. Dr. Rachel
Mm,
can help with that.
mm,
Dr. Rachel has helped us shelter a whole lot of our income because of her recommendation to put one property into service, kind of like an Airbnb, this
mm-hmm,
calendar year. And so it went wild. So thank you for taking us on this segue.
mm-hmm.
I would love to break down real quick what I shared because yes,
Yes.
yeah. So those things that you're doing, I said those things that you're doing is great. Yeah, we can do the 401k, HSA, all of those things. They will reduce your tax liability by 1 to 2%.
Right.
What if what if there's a way to reduce your liability by 80% legally, my friend,
Right.
because we have licenses to protect legally. I don't want anyone calling me into the courthouse, et cetera, et cetera. So, what if there's a way to do this legally? And there's actually three ways to do this legally. And I'm not talking about oil and gas, guys. Don't come for me. I'm not talking about Ponzi schemes, none of that. There are just three ways, and they all invest some type of real estate. So, number
Mm,
one, there's claiming what's called real estate professional status. However, you need to stop working to make that happen. So, I was like, you
mm-hmm.
guys don't qualify for that. You need to be 100%. Now, if you have a spouse who's a stay at home mom, stay at home dad, stay at home person who can take care of real estate, long term rental portfolio, have at it. That is one way. And you get massive tax savings because the IRS rewards two types of people and two types of people only, and they are not W 2 employees. They
Not at
reward
all.
investors and business people, right? Business owners and investors. That's it. So if you have a business of real estate properties, you will get rewarded, but you need to know what's available to you. So rep status is number one. It doesn't work for people who are actually working full time jobs. Number two, it's the medical office tax law. So if you own a pharmacy, if you own a medical office,
Mm,
you can offset your W 2 income if you're paying yourself a W 2 salary by the ownership of that office. So you can't rent it. You need to own it to make that happen. If you don't own one, I'm not recommending you go out and buy a medical office right now. That's a whole other job. Don't do that. What is the lowest hanging fruit? What is something that I can do today and then it builds the bridge for me to have an asset in 30 days? It's actually the short term rental tax loophole. So you purchase a property kind of like an Airbnb, and that is one way that you can offset 80 to 100% of your taxable income. So those are the three ways. And so I went to town sharing about that. And so people were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know about this. And what you said, we're kind of like the information is out there, but there's still
Right.
an information deficit.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Haiti, grew up in the urban center of Miami. We didn't have financial literacy talks at the dinner table. There were no finances to literate upon, if that's a word. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for bringing it full circle, because that is why I'm often, beating my head against the wall when our docs are saying, well, I don't have time to invest in real estate. I don't have time to manage a property. I would say, like, how do you even do that? What would you say? What would your response be, Dr. EG, to someone who says, I don't have time to invest in real estate?
So, well, first off, you make time for things that you value, right? And part
Mm.
of it, I think, is what I hear by that is I hear that you don't understand the value of real estate yet, and
Mm.
so I think that's why this tax conversation is so important. So,
Yeah.
as someone who has a goal to have an 8-figure business,
Yeah.
that means 8 figures sounds great when we're talking about revenue, but that is a whole lot of tax liability.
Yeah.
Like that,
Yeah.
I'm now talking millions of
Hmm.
tax liability, and the answer cannot be buy a G wagon or or just turn all of your software to annual and pay all of them up front, and like that is not the answer when you're at that level of like
That won't make a
income and
dent.
tax. That
Yeah.
doesn't make a dent, and
Mm-mm.
it's just it's a really novice and amateur way to navigate taxes, because it actually does more harm than good,
Yeah.
where the strategy and the hidden curriculum is real estate. So when you understand the value of that real estate has in that type of situation where it helps you offset your taxable income, you own an asset, and then the asset, whether it's appreciation or cash flow, we now have exactly as you were saying, other opportunities for leverage.
Hmm.
Like there's so many opportunities when it comes to real estate. So that's the first thing that I would say is like there's an opportunity to better understand the value,
Mm.
because 9 times out of 10 you are likely paying more in taxes than
Yes.
me. Like
Yeah.
9 times out of
Yeah.
10 you're paying more in taxes than I do,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so like and it's only the only differentiator. Again, I'll be knowing folks business, but it's real estate, right? Like that's the only and here's the thing, it's not uncommon. First off, nobody's bank account is my business other than my own. And it is not uncommon for a real estate investor to get a tax refund, right? And so like those are the things that
100%.
I think it's all about knowledge and proximity. So that's thing number
Yeah.
one. And the second thing that I would say is I think this is where people have to think expansively around
Hmm.
support, around delegation. So for
Yes.
example, I have 5 properties. 2 of them are Airbnbs. One
Yeah.
of them is a long-term rental.
Mhm.
One of them will be a rental, but we're actually just now getting ready to start a rehab project. It's actually my childhood home.
Oh my
And
God.
then the fourth is a rental, but for right now, I'm the renter because I need somewhere to live and I just be like moving around, right? And so, of those 5, when it comes to long term rental, well, I have a property manager.
Hmm.
When it comes to the short term rentals, well, I actually have hired someone to actually help manage those. And
Yeah.
when it comes to the rehab project, well, I have someone on the ground who's the point person for those things. And so that's where I think one of the biggest mindset shifts people have to make when it comes to real estate. It's because oftentimes when we're talking about it, invest, we talk about it as if it's a hobby. It's like, no, it's another business.
Yeah.
So if you treat it like another business, you might need a VA, you might need a W-2 employee that
Yeah.
will help you manage that real estate business, but it's totally possible.
I love it. I love it. And the assumption that you have these 5 properties and you're there every day at the properties while you're running a 7 to 8 figure business, that's unrealistic. And so if
Let me
oh,
say, I have not been at my Charlotte property since I moved out in 2018. Like, I've not been there.
exactly,
They sent me
exactly.
pictures, but like, I
And
I
the
low key
loyalty of
forget.
2025, like, we have FaceTime, we have
Right.
photos, we have video doorbell cameras, we have noise level meters. There's so many ways that we manage our properties. We still self-manage, but am I in the day-to-day? I'll get a report every week. Every 3 months, we'll do a powwow, all hands meeting, but I'm not in the
Right.
day-to-day either, Dr. EJT. And so that's where I think, is it control? Is that the thing? Because when I first started, I did have control issues. I don't know why our docs think we have to be in the trenches. If the plumbing goes wrong, I wouldn't even know where to start. Let's just full
Hmm.
transparency. I'm not her, right? Some people, yeah, that's your jam. I'm here for it. But just like we would outsource the plumbing, outsource the electrical, outsource those types of things, you can outsource the boots on the ground. And that's how many of our docs are able to invest out of state, wouldn't you say?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I think that control thing is huge
Yeah.
because first off, if so, my doctorate is in education leadership. I'm not a medical doctor, and I think something that those of us with terminal degrees have in common is we are very high achieving,
Mm,
extremely high achieving,
yeah,
very detailed
yeah.
oriented,
Our
and
standards are just
of the highest standards of high. And often, in order to have gotten to where we are, we've had to control a lot of things.
mm,
Of like, it was a control was actually like a coping strategy. It was an
mm,
achievement strategy. It is like how we got ish
mm,
done is we controlled so much
mm,
that, and so I think there's a disposition, there's a pivot that you have to make, when you start growing and elevating, and now you're talking about a second business or getting into real estate where you're it's no matter of like what's on your plate, because now it's like my plate is a whole restaurant. Like I don't like it's not a plate no more. Like
yeah,
I don't have just a plate, like because I have multiple businesses. I and here's the other thing where, just to put it in perspective, and I'm speaking from, a recovering controller to, other recovering
mhm,
controllers. 5 properties means 5 electric bills,
mm,
5 cable bills,
mm,
5 AC air bills, water bills,
yeah,
uh, like 5 mortgages,
yeah,
like, so all of my utilities within itself are like 20 to 30 bills. And then the thing is, and I didn't even talk about the fact that all of my properties are in different cities,
yeah,
right? And so that means that now it's not just all the same utility company. It's five
mhm.
different utility companies. Not everybody is on auto pay. Some of them are ACA. And so it's
Even
just,
with a paper check.
oh my God. Some of them don't take Amex. Some of them do. And it's like, and that's just utilities.
Yeah,
So if I were to attempt to control that,
yeah,
like
mm,
the level of energy it requires to control 30 utility bills,
mm,
and that's just utilities, it is so unhealthy
yeah,
that it's like you don't have enough energy to expend to try and control all of those things. And
yeah,
that I think is
so true.
really, the shift and pivot that
Mm,
we have to make as really high achieving leaders have been
yeah,
very successful, whether it's in a 9 to 5 or
mm.
I know y'all be working crazy shifts as medical professionals, but
14
like
hours, yeah.
13-hour shifts. I have
Mhm.
someone I follow who from years ago we met. She does 24-hour shifts, like once or twice a week or something. It's crazy.
Home, mhm,
But you had to control in order to be really successful in those
yeah,
environments. And control means small.
mm,
Like in
mm.
order to be in control, something has to be controllable, which means it has to be small.
Let's talk about it. Can we unpack that? What do you mean by
Yeah,
that? Yes.
meaning meaning you know you can, and this was a little bit of like the plate versus the restaurant analogy
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
like when we're talking about the size of things that you're leading, you can control a business when you're a solopreneur.
Mm,
You
yeah,
cannot control a business when you have 30 plus employees. You can
Mm,
lead and you can manage other people, but you not cannot control. So if you're committed to
mm,
control, you're committed to a small impact, a small business, because
mm,
you can only control something that is, you can only control a plate. You can't control a
mm.
restaurant, right? So
Yes,
that's where, I think it's a part of the reframe of like, if you want to have a big impact in this world, if
yes.
you want to do something that shakes the table, that
Mm,
it has never been done in your family, you want to be the first to do it, right? You can't control that because it's going to be too big. And so,
mm.
and I'm speaking to myself, right? Like as we're saying
Same,
this, of
yeah.
like, and that's a part of the unlearning that we have to go through. Of like, you can control crumbs, right?
Not the crumb.
Yeah, you can control crumbs. You can't
Yeah.
control an empire. Like,
Oof.
so that's where I think it's just the mindset shift. And it does
Yes.
it feel scary? Yes, but
Mm,
like, when you let go and you release, there's a deeper level of impact, of reward, of outcomes that's so much bigger than when you were trying to just control crumbs or control a plate, right?
yeah.
So I think that's yeah, that's kind of what my thought was, and what it
Yeah.
means to control and be committed to small at the same time.
Okay, I'm gonna need that tattooed on my head because literally
Really
earlier
both.
today, yeah, earlier today, I was like, why don't I know exactly what someone on our team, is doing, like moment by moment by moment? And why don't I know exactly what she is doing moment by moment by moment? I'm seeing the outcomes, but I wonder, that's control. That's me wanting the control of the small, of the minutia. Meanwhile, in the
Right,
green room, I'm talking to you about how we're trying to grow, how we're trying to
right,
expand.
right,
Oh
right.
my gosh. Because ultimately, I have big, hairy, audacious goals. I want to make
Mhm.
an impact. I got projects in Haiti and I want that bigger impact. But then I've got these small control issues that you just checked me because I'm the first to say I don't have control issues. But when you just shared that, I was like, wait a minute. It creeps back in. It
Girl,
creeps
and I'm
back
preaching to
in.
myself. Listen, 100%. I mean, because when you've done it for decades of your
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you definitely have to manage it and check it. That doesn't mean like the opposite of control isn't like uncontrollable or out of
Yeah.
control. Like that's not the
Yeah.
opposite. Because as a leader, you set parameters, you set checks and balances, you put systems and structures in place, and
Yes.
and it's like, where does the control sit, right? The
Yeah.
control sits with people and systems. It doesn't sit with you.
Yeah.
And so that's, I mean, it's such a necessary, but also like really, really personal and hard shift
Yeah.
to make, because it can also, deeply is intertwined with safety, right?
Yeah.
Of like, control has kept us
Mm.
safe for so long that like the thought of
Mm.
being out of control feels like a lack of safety. So it's lots of like unlearning that has to happen. And listen, like I said, I'm preaching to
Yeah.
myself as we're having this conversation. And I
Yeah.
believe it's necessary for us to get out of the way in order for
Yeah.
things to keep growing.
1,000%, 1,000%. And the funny thing is, even when you think you've solved it, it'll creep back up and rear its ugly head. It's like, oh, there you go. You're back. I see. Mm-mm.
Mm. But
I
and
love
it's
it.
and it's a gift though, because I
Yeah.
will say, and this makes me think of like one of my like, there's good days and there's bad days in real estate. And
Yeah.
the bad day of showing up to a property that was supposed to be rental ready 60 days ago, but the property manager was clearly dropped the ball, and now there's trash, there's food, there's things all everywhere over the property. Controlling Erica steps up and manages the situation, has fired the property manager, and what was supposed to be rent ready 60 days ago is now rent ready in 2 days,
Yeah.
right? So like, I know how to step in and control when I need to, but
Yeah.
then I also know how to step out. So there's this kind of dance that you got to do to be able to figure out, when it's always a gift. It was survival strategy for a reason, but then you got to recognize, when does it serve you and when does it not.
Ooh. That's so good. And something you mentioned, and I've seen you, I'm just a cyber stalker. I've seen you on social media share your planning process. I saw your big calendar when you do your quarterly one-on-one retreats with yourself, and then you map out what your week looks like. Would you mind sharing with us some of the systems that you use on, say, a weekly or a monthly basis, so that you can have that higher level of control without being in the day-to-day minutia of, I wonder what everyone's doing every minute of every hour.
Yes, yes. So I have a few different systems, but I'll share just three briefly. So the first is, so you mentioned my annual planning process that I
Mhm,
do, which I do once a year, and I plan out the vision for the entire year, and then I go really deep in the quarter. Then I have
mhm,
quarterly planning throughout the years to plan out like the next preceding quarter, and then I
mhm,
do weekly planning every week to
mhm,
progress, monitor, pivot, and adjust. So the first thing that I would say is during that weekly planning process, the very first thing that I do is gratitude. And so I think
mm,
it's really important,
yes,
particularly when you're high achieving, you struggle with perfectionism.
yes,
There's this like mental loop that we've created where we just move on from things really quickly. And it's
try
really
to achieve
easy
the
to,
next thing, the next thing, the
you're
next thing, yeah.
exactly, you're moving on to the next thing, which means an unintended consequence is you forget what happened. You
Mm,
forget what went well. You forget that your team member has handled that before. You
yeah,
forget that you handled it before. And so, starting with that gratitude is a reminder of what is going well, of the bright spots, because if it happened
mm,
before, it'll happen again, right? So
yes,
that's the one of the strategies. A second strategy, just to be able to see a system that I've put in place, is a weekly scorecard. So
mm,
for our team, everyone on our team has their own assigned KPIs, key performance indicators,
yeah,
which are basically metrics that they're assigned to be able to monitor that indicate their progress towards some assigned goal. So, for example, for our sales manager, one of her KPIs is number of sales calls booked per week, right? Because
mm,
clearly, if you booking calls, you're going to be selling, right? And so that weekly scorecard, it lists all the KPIs in the company for each person on our team. And everyone is responsible for completing dropping in their KPIs into that scorecard before
mhm.
our monthly team meeting every Tuesday. So
So
that
they
score,
fill out the actual score themselves?
correct,
Oh,
correct.
that's good.
So
That's what I
that
think we're
is
missing, yes.
so, and that was a shift that I had to make because before
Mhm.
I was doing this all on my own, but I'd be like, why am I pulling the number of sales calls and I got a sales manager, she need to be pulling that, right? But
Yes.
that was controlling me, right? I was like, I
Mhm.
need to step out because if she's gonna own this, she gotta own the KPI, right? And for
Yeah,
my entire team across the board. So with
yeah.
the dashboard, that allows for ownership, but it gives me a snapshot of the business where
Yes.
I can see how much money did we make last week. Another KPI is failed payments, calls booked, a percent of
Mhm.
budget for one of our events. So I can just see at a snapshot and at a week's glance where we
Mhm.
are in the business to then be able to figure out focus and pivots for the week. And
Yes.
then the third and final system that I would name has just been really, really helpful for me is how I structure my weeks. So for
Mm.
me, and this is something that I kind of adjust like every quarter, and I try for 90 days and then make any pivots of what's necessary. So for
Mhm.
me, currently in this season, I only take meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Nice.
So in this season of my business, I need three open, no meeting days to
Mm.
be able to vision set,
Yeah.
plan, look at data, and work. Like I
Mm.
actually got to get stuff done.
Yeah.
But also, if I'm going to step out and not be in control, I've got to be able to have uninterrupted time as the captain
Yes.
of the ship to see the ship, be able to say, okay, are the waters rocky? Are they smooth? Are we going to turn left? Are we going to turn right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the speed of the wind? Like, I've got to be able to have that time to really be able
Yes.
to be clear and focused. So, those would be the three things that I would say from a system and planning standpoint.
Mm.
Three of many things, but those are just three things from my planning standpoint.
That is so good. That is so good. And so, speaking of business structure, KPIs, team, rumor has it that you have a relative on your team, a sister.
I do.
You work with your sister? That's amazing. So, no offense, but I go back and forth. Personally, it's like, do I want family in my business? Do I not want family? My husband and I, we fired each other multiple times. We're still married, but we are not really in business together, so to speak. But nevertheless, still love him, still love family. But it hasn't gone well for me in the past hiring
Mm.
family. EJT, talk to us. How is it going with yours? Is there tea? Is there drama? Tell me about it.
Listen, it's fascinating because for the longest I said I don't work with team. I would even say I don't work with friends. Like it was
No
just a
family,
really
no friends.
clear like
Right, right.
boundary for me, and I was honestly put in a situation where I had no choice. So when I mentioned the property that I showed up, I
Mm-hmm.
hired a property management company. They were going to get it
Wow.
rent ready. They were going to manage it. It was going to be Airbnb. I showed up and
What's up?
it was a mess. It was a nightmare. And I was like, okay, I need to get this thing turned around and posted and ready to rent within like the next 48 hours.
Yeah.
And this property's in Columbus, Ohio.
Mm.
I don't live in Columbus, Ohio. I'm from
Mm-mm.
Columbus, Ohio, but I don't live there, right? And so I was like, okay. And this was at the time, this was my first Airbnb. So I was like, I know I don't have the capacity to be responding to folks' messages. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't live here. So if there's something that, whether it's maintenance or needed, like, I'm not here. I just need help.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, my sister lives down the street from the property.
No.
And so I told myself, I was like, I just need your help. And like, can you I had to get the rule book set up, check in, check out procedures, set up the automations, re-snacking, filling, finding cleaners, meeting the cleaners, the laundry, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
she was like, sure. And I mean, the way she showed up for me, and I think, what affirmed for me that okay, this is gonna be able to work is my sister does not take advantage of the fact that she's my sister.
Mm.
So she does not want to disappoint me. She takes
Mm.
pride in showing up on my behalf to where she she does not want to. She was like, listen, I could do a good, be late for somebody else, but who I won't be late for is
Wow.
my sister because I don't want to make her look bad and I don't want to look bad to her. Right. So
Mm.
there is a level of respect that she has in our relationship that allows this to work. That if that was not there, I think that, and also the fact that she doesn't feel entitled just because she's my sister. She doesn't feel entitled to my time. She doesn't feel entitled to my money. She doesn't feel entitled to anything that I have. She is grateful to be able to support me and I pay her, but she's grateful. So I think the fact that those two pieces are our foundation,
Yeah.
it allows us to work well because when I hear most kind of issues where
Mm.
and I think there's other layers of like, how you communicate. That is one thing that we've had to like work through because one day she told me I act just like our mama and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I ain't never had no employee tell me I act like my mama. Like, let's talk about that. Let's unpack it.
Right.
So, we working on our communication
Yeah.
and she shows up. So
Yeah.
those would be, the things that allows this to work. Now, would I say I would hire other members of my family? Absolutely not. Like, no, ma'am. And this one is working really well, and I don't feel inclined to start the family train of come work for me at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm so fascinated by it though, I will tell you, because I have 2 boys, right? And so I'm looking at them the way they're looking at me. They want nothing to do with me or my businesses right now, but I'm thinking future pacing, right? So my son, he just got a little job at the pizza shop and I see him working
Mm,
really hard. He shows up on time. He'll work overtime. I'm like, interesting. And
mm-hmm.
so that's something that I have in the back of my mind, but I want them to work out in the real world before I ever entertain them being a part of my business because I am
Right,
concerned about entitlement. I'm concerned
right,
about them
right.
thinking. So I want them to know how it really is, so that once they graduate college, they'll bring something, to the table that would, work out. So that's really, really interesting. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course, of
Okay,
course.
so last question before we dive into some rapid fire. Can you tell us about a time where you've encountered a setback, the big F word, failure? People are so afraid of failure. I know us in entrepreneurship at this point, we're like, that's just Tuesday, okay? But it's something
Mhm.
that felt like a failure on your business journey, but ultimately led through to some type of a breakthrough or even a better opportunity.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind was actually the very, very first offer I put in on a home. So
Oh.
this would have been back in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I mentioned I bought my first property in 2013. The first offer I put in on the home was probably like 2010,
Mhm.
2011. And I got pre-approved, working with a realtor, found a property that I at the time was in love with, put in an
Mhm.
offer, and then at what had occurred was there was, mind you, at this time I'm like 23, 22, 23. I had a late payment on a Ann Taylor credit card bill that hit my credit report and
Ann
dropped my credit
Taylor, not
score.
Ann Taylor.
Girl, and I used to work at Ann Taylor. That was the only reason why I had a credit card. A whole nother story. But anyway,
Oh my god.
um, but at that time, I'm 22, 23 years old,
Mhm.
trying to make it and survive out here in these streets. And that dropped my credit score to where I no longer qualified.
Oh my
And
god.
so I had to, obviously, I couldn't move forward with the property. And I was like devastated by it.
Yeah.
I was absolutely devastated. And it's like one of those things where like, credit card companies report like later. So I'm like, this was like a payment from like 90 days ago or a few months. Like, it was just like, I was like, but this wasn't last month. Like, is there any way? And they were like, no, I'm sorry. Like, you just don't have the credit score to be able to qualify. And I was so heartbroken by that. And it took me like another year or two in order to like actually be able to get back in the game and do the work that I needed to in order to be able to find my next property. And when I look back on it, I don't know if that first property that I would have purchased would have been appreciating at the same way in which the home that I bought did.
Yeah.
And so, because I think it was like a townhome,
Yeah.
there's no way like the townhome would have doubled in value.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so everything, is steps have been ordered, everything was divine, but that's what comes to mind when I think about that.
So good. Can you share a moment when you felt completely burnt out and how you overcame it?
A moment I felt completely burnt out. Um, there isn't a moment where that comes to me where I mean, it might have been like back in college is probably the last time like I felt like completely burnt out. Um, but I think I think the reason behind that is why I'm struggling to recall like I'm completely burnt out is um, I am very, very intentional around like seasons of work and sacrifice and
Mm.
seasons of rest. And
Mm.
part of what I had to realize is like rest can't just be limited to the vacation or PTO. Like, what does daily rest look like? What
Mm.
does weekly practice look like? So I'm
Mm.
I'm pretty open with the fact that I take daily naps. Like around 1 to 2 o'clock, I take a nap. Like
Mhm.
that is a part of my practice. I get massages at least every
Yes.
other week,
That's a
where
whole
I keep.
checklist. Daily nap, massages. Continue.
Yes, I keep my phone on do not disturb, so my phone does
Yes.
not ring. There, it, I just first of all, I don't like talking on the phone, but also
Mhm.
that's a part of like being able to protect my energy. And
Mm.
where there's just certain ways that I orchestrate my day. I don't take meetings until 10 o'clock
Yeah.
because I am a night owl versus an
Mhm.
early riser, so I don't like talking to nobody before 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of like things that I put in place to be
Mm.
able to create the type of energy that I need. And like right now, I'm in a high peak week actually for the next
Mhm.
2 weeks. So what
Yeah.
does that mean? Is like I'm taking naps. I'm adjusting my schedule right now. I typically go to that gym for 2 hours. This week I'm going for an hour because I
Yeah.
need the extra time back to be able to manage some of the things
Mhm.
that are coming with the next 2 weeks. So part of those is a lot of like choices around how I rest, but not defining rest to like, well, the next like PTO vacation is like, nah,
Mhm.
I'm about to rest as soon as we wrap this. I'm taking a nap because I
I
got a
love
workshop
that.
tonight.
Love
That's
that.
yeah, that's how I roll.
That's I think you've given our community some building blocks of a checklist, a framework. I like when you mentioned the daily, you're finding your daily rest. How do you daily create a little bit of margin for yourself
Yep.
to take a breath, right? For those of
Right.
you who are listening in your car right now, maybe go and finding a spot with some shade and taking a 15-minute nap. Don't sit around in the lunchroom. Go and take a little
Right.
nap. I'm
Right.
here for it. Yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
I love it. All right. So, what is a tool that you're loving right now? It could be maybe a podcast you listen to, or a piece of software, an app, a book that you've read, something that you're loving right now that really is helping make your life a little bit easier or your business a little bit easier.
So on the theme of rest, I have a Hatch sleep clock, and
Oh.
so it's a clock that you can has an app that comes along with it,
Hmm.
and you can set up a sleep routine in the app.
Mm.
So at 10:30, my Hatch sleep clock will start playing music, and it
Mm.
plays 10 minutes of music as my like. This is your sign that it's time to go to bed. And then there's a whole like
Take yourself
45
to
minute.
bed, like, as entrepreneurs, take your butt to bed. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a whole like 45-minute like routine I've built in the app that is
Mm.
triggered by music. So it's like 20 minutes of
Mm.
one particular music, which is the time where I take a shower, I get ready for bed.
Mhm.
Then there's 20 minutes of a second type of music where for me is the cue. It's like, okay, this is your 20 minutes worth of reading time. And then when
Mhm.
the 5-minute meditation starts, then it's like, girl, you need to be in the bed and close your eyes. So that is helping me right now
Amazing.
tremendously.
I love that. And lastly, what's the craziest real estate story you have experienced or heard of? Probably outside of the one your 60-day deadline that
I'll tell you the one that I've heard of
Okay, tell me.
because I feel like I'm still like uh, not new in the game, but like I feel like I have more crazy to experience because there's more to come. But I tell you what I've heard of, and I pray to God I don't experience as a squatter.
Oh,
I
my goodness.
I just rebuke any squatters
Rebuke in the name. Yes.
in the name
Yes.
of Jesus. I rebuke any and all squatters. Okay. So
Yes.
that I mean all any squatter story, I am like, oh
Yeah.
my God. And depending on states, of
Mhm. The
the
rules.
rights that they have, I mean, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So those are always to me the craziest stories is the squatter stories.
Oh my goodness. Dr. Erica, I knew this conversation was going to be fire. You have exceeded our expectations as usual. Thank you so much for sharing your practical
Yes.
systems, your tips for managing all the things, your insights about working with family. And these are all gems that we, as doctors, physicians, pharmacists, psychotherapists, our listeners can use. And I know that they're going to be in the comments just sharing the love. I absolutely look forward to all of it. And I'm looking forward to our medical office hoodies when we're looking at merch.
Oh
Maybe I need the
yes.
cute little hoodie. Oh
Mhm.
my goodness. I would love for people to connect with you. So tell the people what's the best way they can find you in the social spaces, or is there you let us know and then we'll definitely add it to
Yeah.
the show notes.
Yeah, so I hang out mostly on Instagram and Facebook. So if you just search my name, Erica Jordan hyphen Thomas, and then that's me on Facebook. On Instagram, my handle is E underscore Jordan Thomas without the hyphen. So if you search for me, I pop up. A note that I always have a verified badge. So
Yeah.
if you see my picture, but you don't see the blue verified, it is on Facebook or Instagram. It ain't me. So look for the little verified icon, and
Yeah.
I'd love to connect with folks.
I love it. I love it. And I just love the way you've used your transferable skills from education to all the things that you're doing right now. And I know that's going to resonate with those in our community who think that, okay, now I need to go and get a whole real estate degree. Not
Right.
necessarily, right? You've got the skills. You are uniquely qualified to get into the real estate game. You don't have to choose between medicine and building your wealth elsewhere. You can actually do both because we're not all one trick ponies. We're multi
Exactly.
talented for sure. So thank you for joining us
Yes.
today. For those of you who are listening, definitely tune in and love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.